I wanted to start by talking a little bit about BDS um, because we're already starting to see what tends to happen with these big moments regarding Israel and Palestine, where there is a horrific event, something that makes it very clear what's going on the ground. There's a lot of international outcry. I would still contend that it's been much stronger and pointed than ever before. But, there's a ceasefire and then things start to settle down. People stop paying attention. Despite having the same feelings, people don't really know where to go. And that was one thing, too, that was interesting about how organic a lot of the reaction in the United States in particular was to what was happening. Is that, a lot of people wanted to do something, but they didn't really know where to go with it other than posting and educating, which in this context is extremely important. And also donating. But as many activists and people in Palestine have been trying to remind folks, these aren't natural disasters. These are political disasters, which means that there needs to be a political solution to them. And I think it's important for us all to take a moment to remind ourselves that there are actual very concrete things that people can do regarding the Israeli apartheid system. To start with, I wanted to shout out, and let me see, man, I'm actually having an issue with sharing my screen because you're sharing something.
Let me stop that right now.
Yeah. I wanted to shout out Abby Martin and the Council on American Islamic Relations in Georgia for this huge victory that we saw early this week, where the federal court says Georgia BDS law violates First Amendment. The ruling comes in response to a lawsuit that was filed against the state by journalist Abby Martin.
Correct.
And I believe as part of a media conference in 2020, Abby Martin was trying to be required by Georgia Southern University to sign a pledge that included a loyalty oath to Israel. By signing the contract, Martin would have promised to not boycott the country. The Council on American Islamic Relations and Partnership for Civil Justice Fund filed a lawsuit challenging that law on behalf of Martin. And as of now, the court has struck it down. And the pathway for the Georgia law, the specific Georgia law, seems like it's going to be a very long one if they want to reinstate it, because they have to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. So this is a huge, huge victory. And seriously, shout out to Abby Martin and all the people who were engaged in this. But I want to talk about what they were trying to stop there. They were trying to stop BDS. And if you think that this is not something that's serious, you should look at how hard the right wing and Zionist organizations in the United States and the U.S. The U.S. State Department in general is trying to fight to prevent people from engaging in BDS. There have been over 200 bills that have been introduced across state governments to prevent people or organizations from engaging in BDS. In Oklahoma and Missouri, they signed more laws during the COVID-19 pandemic to prevent people from getting into, participating in BDS. Trump issued an extremely egregious executive order trying to prevent people from engaging in BDS. And even amongst the more progressive wing of the Democratic Party, there is pushback. Notably, only really Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Cori Bush are people who support BDS. AOC has been extremely, extremely disappointing on this. And it's really disappointing with her because she knows better.
Yeah.
And also, we're not going to pull punches either. As much as we love, Bernie Sanders is also really disappointing on BDS. And this is him speaking on it just recently.
There are a number of liberals who use the word apartheid to describe Israel's treatment of the Palestinians. A number of them liberals in the House who use that language. The executive director of the American Jewish Congress, who handled Jewish outreach for your campaign, has said that word, Joel Rubin, has said that using that word has increased the level of vitriol that has contributed to this anti-Semitism. Do you think those who share your view should not use that kind of language?
Well, I think we should tone down the rhetoric. I think our goal is very simple. It is to understand that what's going on in Gaza today is unsustainable. When you have 70% of the young people unemployed, when people cannot leave the community, when hospitals and wastewater plants have been destroyed. That is unsustainable. And the job of the United States is to bring people together. And that is what we have got to try to do.
And look, again, Bernie Sanders there is trying to highlight the egregious nature of the conflict, the asymmetry, but it's certainly not enough. And I would go beyond Bernie Sanders. They're saying that, we need to tone down the rhetoric. I don't think we need to tone it down. But even more importantly than just talking about rhetoric, we have to move from beyond, from just rhetoric to actual political action. To use a phrase that we love from Leo Panich, moving from protest to politics. And I just want to give a very quick explainer as to what BDS is so people can understand it, right? Because it's a buzzword that people know is controversial, but what does BDS actually mean? It means boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It was launched in 2005, led by Palestinians. Boycott comes first, right? Because it's the first way that we can engage in this kind of politics. And what boycott means is both boycotting companies that profit and engage in the apartheid system, right? And also that are, supporters of the Israeli apartheid system, but also boycotting cultural events. So trying to encourage, performers and musicians from not performing in Israel, participating in an academic boycott of the country as well. A divestment, that means encouraging banks, pension funds, and universities. I know we have a lot of university students who listen to this show. Check out where your university is invested in, and you will oftentimes find that they are invested in companies that directly profit from the apartheid system in Israel. Right. And that's a great target for you to start to put pressure in your own community to fight back against the system. And lastly, is sanctions against this brutal regime. Right. But that will only come once you have a groundswell of support that has to be built up from the bottom up. And just so we're clear about this, the goals of BDS are very simple. People like to conflate and tell a lot of stories about what BDS represents, but the goals are very simple. It's 1, end the occupation. 2, recognize the rights of Arab Israeli citizens. And 3, recognize the right of return of Palestinian refugees. These are simple, common sense, basic humanitarian solutions to this crisis, right? And this is not something that should be controversial. Remember, there are companies that you can be boycotting, like SodaStream, Caterpillar, Puma, General Mills, Pillsbury, Barclays Bank. There's a lot of great lists of all of these companies that directly profit from this institution. But understand that the people who want to maintain the system of apartheid fight very hard to prevent you from being able to engage in organized boycott systems, because they are afraid of what that will do to the system. There's been a lot of success in even recent history when we're talking about apartheid regarding South Africa in similar tactics being used effectively to fight against these systems. And it's something that you can do directly right now, either through joining an organization that participates in BDS or encouraging members of your community as well to participate in this program. But this is the thing. It's like you have to move beyond just the rhetoric, and we have to start taking action, especially if you're living in the United States, UK, Canada, countries that very much prop up this system.
I mean, how far we are from the sanction element of it. Like, I would add to the sanction, we need to change the tax policy that allows foundations that literally fund settlements from being tax deductible. And then you contrast that with all the fundraisers done for Palestine over the past couple of weeks, how much difficulty they're having getting money to people just to pay for, basic necessities of society that have been bombed into rubble. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And, it has to be noted time and time again, there is a huge money-making operation, behind the increased settlements. These things are not just accidental. All these things, you can talk about, a lot of different issues and motivations for why the settlements are ongoing, but there's a huge financial incentive. And by cutting off those taps from the United States and Europe, you can really weaken those forces that right now have a lot of geopolitical and capital power.